Madam President, I rise today to talk about a resolution that I have introduced with my fellow senator from Maine, Susan Collins, and 11 other fellow senators from both sides of the aisle, truly bipartisan, to designate November 2019 as the National Homeless Children and Youth Awareness Month. Specifically, this resolution highlights the issue of children and youth homelessness and supports the efforts of businesses, organizations, educators, and volunteers that are dedicated to meeting the needs of homeless children and youth. In the 2016 and 2017 school year, there were 1.3 million children and youth, I repeat, 1.3 million children and youth who experienced homelessness in the United States. In West Virginia alone, our schools have identified more than 10,500 students experiencing homelessness. This is simply unacceptable, and we must do more to support our future generations. That is why I am a firm believer that there are five promises that we as adults should make to every child. Every child must be and must have an unconditional, loving, caring adult in their life. That's the first. Every child must know that someone loves them unconditionally. No matter what you do, no matter what mistakes you make, at the end of the day, that person loves you. Could be your mom and dad, could be a grandma, grandpa, could be an aunt, uncle, could be a neighbor, someone that knows that they got your back no matter what. Number two, every child must have a safe place to call home where harm cannot enter. I would hope it's a home that they live in. Sometimes it's not always that case. Sometimes it might be a school, it might be an after-school program, it could be a church, it could be a neighbor's home. Every child has to have somewhere safe in their life growing that harm cannot enter them, and they're protected. Number three, every child must have a healthy start and access to a nutritional diet. I think it's why you've seen in our school systems, we've expanded our nutritional programs from breakfasts to lunches. When I went to school way back when in little rural areas, we had no cafeterias, no lunches. But for some reason, I could always tell when my mom or other parents would put an extra sandwich in the lunch pail, knowing that we couldn't eat it, but somebody could. There was always those who kind of stepped in and helped others. And now we have that, but every child has to have a healthy start and access to a nutritional diet if they're going to grow and be engaged, but basically to be productive. The fourth one, every child should be taught a livable skill so that they can make their own way through life. That's why primary and secondary education is free in America. It makes us different than every country in the world. We commit to every child to get an education, to be literate, every child. And that's why the education should be held at a higher standard, to make sure that you have a skill set. There should be no child graduating from high school that's not ready to work or ready to learn more. We should be able to identify at 7th, 8th, 9th grade what their interests are going to be, whether they're going to be skill set driven or whether they're going to be academia driven. Both are needed. And not make them feel like a failure if they don't go to college, because a lot of people aren't designed to go to college. A lot of them want to work with their hands. They want the skill sets. They have that ability. And we should identify that very early. The fifth promise is the hardest promise you cannot teach. You can't teach this promise that you should keep to every child. That child should be taught, that child should grow to be a loving, caring adult and give something back. They can only learn that fifth one by how you conduct your life. How that special adult in their life, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor, after hours group, school, someone in their life has given them hope to where, hey, I can be that person. I can give something back. I can help somebody like me. That's the five promises. If we can't keep that, then God help us all. And we owe that to every generation. To have one child homeless in this country is wrong. Homeless means you have no stable, you have no functional family. You have no biological mom or dad to go home to. You're either surf couching. You're basically living with another relative, distant, whatever it may be. And this is something that we have to intervene and make sure that we can correct. We must keep these promises to our children so that our future generations will grow up to be the best that they possibly can and meet all their expectations. We expect our children and youth to care about their education. But if they don't have a roof over their head or a place to sleep, if they don't have adequate nutrition and meals, they can't focus on learning like they should be able to. I had one child said, I'm just trying to survive. I am just trying to make it through the day and survive. I would love to get the education you want me to get, but when it becomes basically survival tactics or educational tactics, survival will kick in first. And that's what they're dealing with. This crisis is affecting not just these students in their home, but it affects their school life too, and we must do better to ensure that they can learn and give back to their communities. Speaking of doing more, there's a lot of great work being done in my state of West Virginia and nationally, and I'm sure in all the states. One wonderful example is the Children's Home Society in West Virginia, who I know are watching and are gathered for their annual conference today, and I want to thank them for their incredible work that they've been doing. They have been a strong leader in helping children and families that experience homelessness in West Virginia. We truly appreciate their leadership on this issue in our state and hope that their work can be used as a standard for the other states to combat this issue. Recently, I visited South Charleston Middle School to see the work that they are doing to address the child and youth homelessness crisis facing our state from the school perspective of a student's life, much of which is spent at school. They use federal funding to help correctly identify students who are homeless so they can provide services to those who need them. I hope that my resolution will help raise awareness on this issue so that more schools can use the funds available to support the students who are experiencing homelessness. In West Virginia, the child and youth homeless crisis is intensified by the opioid crisis that has ravaged our state. The lasting effects of the epidemic on our children and future generations are terrible, from the increase in children and youth homelessness to a rise in youth substance use disorder. This crisis will continue to affect communities like those all across West Virginia for decades to come, which is why we must begin to combat and address the issues like child and youth homelessness now. In the middle of this crisis, there are success stories too, like Hannah's. Hannah's parents could not care for her because of substance use issues, so she went to live with a family friend who subsequently removed all support. A high school counselor referred Hannah to the Youth Service System Transitional Living Program, which helped her finish high school and go on to college. She is a recipient of the YSS Ronald Mulholland Future Scholarship and attends West Virginia University, where she is now a junior studying chemistry. Last summer, she completed an internship in Tennessee. The Youth Service System is a wonderful national organization that works to provide shelter for children and youth across America. Organizations like the Youth Services System and the Children's Home Society deserve recognition for their incredible work because without them, success stories like Hannah's and so many others wouldn't even exist, which is why we must raise awareness of this issue so that we can support the wonderful work being done across the United States every day. I'm so proud to be here today to advocate for those 1.3 million children and youth across our nation who need our help and deserve our help. We must do better for them, and I believe strongly that this resolution is the beginning to work towards solving this major crisis our nation has, with broad bipartisan support. And if there's one thing that brings us together, it's the children. It's not Democrat or Republican problem. It's all of our problem. It's an American problem, and we have to face it. The support of 23 national organizations, I hope this resolution will pass quickly. I look forward to working with my colleagues who have signed on to this resolution and those on both sides of the aisle to bring us back together to combat child and youth homelessness. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.